look at, in terms of learning objectives, you might start from the learning objective point of view and then kind of back into the requirement. And, a lot of us actually go from, we're still doing left to right. But the learning objectives sort of at a very high level at the program level may be very broad. And then as we're breaking down those requirements, we're thinking about more finer grained learning objectives. We get to the smaller requirements, we get even more finer grained learning objectives, and then eventually get to the course themselves. And so to actually design it from a complete learning objective point of view, if you want to do that, you can start, from the program level, work through your courses, and even actually get down to the material, that's taught in the course. So maybe this will get us a little bit into requisites. I didn't see this coming, but this is a hypothetical degree audit system where you have to do things a certain way, and you have to key off of subject areas and course codes to do these rules. And then you do these begin and end statements. So there probably aren't many mortals who can type in this language, and you always worry when there's semicolons at the end of the statements, but this was an example of one piece of an evaluation in a degree audit system, and how many credits in math and English, 6 credits in any one of these languages that have to be taken as part of the completion of the program. And we can sort of break that down semantically and start assigning names to things and talking in our native tongue. And so I might say, well, it looked like that was part of some liberal arts requirement. Well, I actually couldn't tell what that requirement was for because it just jumped right into the language of that rules evaluation system. But it was pretty clear to me that there was a math component to it, an English component to it, and a foreign language component to it. I'm sorry, I'm doing this from the United States point of view where I'm sitting. And so I need to take 6 units in some set of math courses, and it had something to do with querying of the subject codes, but I might as well just create a set of courses either explicitly or around some rule to express that. And 6 units in English and 6 units among some foreign languages, but it's the set of French, German, Russian, Chinese, and so forth. So I can create a more human-friendly view of these requirements. So it helps us implement it correctly, but it, also on the curriculum design, and it helps us actually visualize what it is we're actually doing when we're designing these requirements in the first place. And so if I want to add a different kind of rule that, maybe I have a certain pass-fail requirement, but this one is actually a limit. And so I'm limited to 6 units where I'd actually pass them. So in thinking about requirements, what are we actually doing? We're actually measuring, what does the student know? And, in those issues, we kind of want to get away from things that are cross-listed. We kind of want to get away from, was this a test or was this a course equivalent or a prereq? And we kind of want to pop up to the requirement level and describe what does the student know. A lot of program requirements also have what I just call the, diverse requirement or course distribution requirement, making sure you take so many units across a breadth of things, so you're just not specializing in one area. And then there's another requirement that's always there or implicit, which kind of measures how hard the student worked for their degree. And that's where you get things like, must have 120 units to graduate. So in the design of EagleApps, we usually ask the question, what requirements the student has completed or what requirements the student has not completed. And so that's the kind of question that is available in our program progression side of the house. And so the answer is always supplied by an implementation of that service. And so it's the service responsibility to, in response to those questions, evaluate the student's academic record. So we'll be looking at the student course records and exam records and program records, and to be able to do an evaluation in real time. Right, so Norm mentioned earlier about sometimes you can look at a university website or part of it and start pulling and culling out requirements because they've often documented that in HTML. Not often readable, codified into a system if it exists at all. And so I did this with the core requirements at Boston College, and I started painting a picture. I will zoom in on it a little bit. So hopefully you can see that a little better. And this was to understand, were we able to capture the core requirements for Boston College? And it was actually pretty straightforward because they listed them all on the webpage. And so for every little subheading in the webpage, I put a blue rectangle around it. You see, and they say I'm good at modeling. And then behind that, I tried to understand what the rules were. So I named the requirement first, and then I kind of backed into what I thought the rules were. And very often there was a cultural diversity. You needed to take 3 minimum credits on this set of courses. For history, you need to take 6 on this set of courses. And so it's those little headings under the purple boxes are giving you just a hint of what some of the data bits are that we plop in those requisite rules. And I just backed everything with a set of courses and just listed them right off the website. And turns out there were a lot the student is able to choose from in order to fulfill their core requirements. And their core requirements are fulfilled, when they've done each of those blue boxes. So those of you in UOC might find this picture a little familiar. This was provided to me. I think Francesca drew something on the board and said, we'd like to visualize our program and our requirements. It had this kind of flow chart model to it, where you start with the bachelor level of economics, and the long rectangles are each of the main requirements that were named. Actually, I don't think they were named at the time. And then you had a list of courses. So I took it and made this modification, and I said, I first want to name the requirements. I just don't want a bunch of circles with lists of courses, and I don't know what they mean. So I went and spent some time surfing around the UOC website, and I was able to kind of glean from the language they used, or there's, their H2 headings on the HTML page. Oh, I think this is like, this is an introductory core requirement, and sometimes I made it up and I said, oh, this is an advanced course requirement. And to try to break up the different courses into different named requirements. And then looking at the rectangles, I get a better idea of what the flow through the program is than just jumping down into one of these sets of courses, this and this or that or the other thing. All of what we're able to do here, EagleApps supports in its service environment. And so one could create this kind of application to view programs requirements and the requisite rules, i.e. the list of courses all together. But before I got here, I wanted to understand a little bit more about what would the UOC program hierarchy look like? What does that picture look like? And I drew this picture. It's okay, you can't see it. I will zoom into part of it to give you a flavor of what it is. But what I did is I unified in this diagram the various UOC programs, their requirements and requisite rules, and kind of merging them all together into one place to give me a picture of it. I think I did okay. But here, up in this corner here, is the equivalent of the undergraduate program that we use at Boston College I defined a completion requirement. And so that requirement was I needed to complete 180 units in order to graduate, and I had to complete one of these programs. And then I drilled into this program. That has a completion requirement. And its rule is I have to complete some of these other requirements. And there's introductory core, political economy, and down the hierarchy I went. And then I was able to convince myself that the model that EagleApps was using can cover, most or all of how USC is managing its requirements. So that gives you a little flavor of the sort of the strength and the power of EagleApps. And I think it lies in its ability to connect not only some of the administrative processes that are necessary for keeping things moving along, but also connecting it with education and curriculum design. And so a lot of these things were not afterthoughts in EagleApps. It was modeled that way from the get-go in its bones. And so there's a lot of things hiding within the system models. And so, I think it provides a lot of exciting opportunities, whether, doing integrations with other systems or developing your own applications, not only to just streamline internal office processes, but also building valuable tools to support the mission of education and student success. So with that, I will stop here and hand it over to Linda McCarthy.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Dan. And thank everyone for joining the session and spending some time with us this morning. So I just kind of wanted to try to wrap the 3 sessions that we've done with demos and discussions. And over the past 3 weeks, we've focused on the early activities that are done to set up a new academic year. Utilizing the CM courses module that we saw in the first demo, the department admins are reviewing their courses, they're updating them, they're creating new ones, and they're retiring courses that they're no longer going to offer. Student services does a rollover of the course offering, reviewing those results, and then handing it over to the department admins, who then go in and review their course offerings, verifying the number of sections, the faculty assignments, seat pools, and for new sections that they're creating based on new courses, they're assigning faculty the day and the time that they would like to hold that course, and they're requesting a room assignment from student services, and then the central administrator scheduler reviews those room requests and assigns them a room. Then they turn their attention to reviewing, utilizing CM courses, programs module. The department admin is doing the same thing that they just did for courses. They're looking at the programs that they're offering. Do they need to make any changes? Are they adding new ones? Are they retiring programs? And then students, in preparation for registration, they may want to add or drop a program. So a student may go to a department admin and talk to them about it, and the department admin would do it, or the student can do it themselves. And they may just they create a new program enrollment request for that needs to get approved before they can register, because if they want to take certain courses, they have to be in a particular program. Department admins and deans review and approve all of those. They could also reject it, call the student in. And then just in general, all of these activities are really in preparation for student registration each semester. And then Dan talked about the student info app, and he just demoed that student info app. And that provides a view into how the student was admitted to BC, and that information is coming in through our integration with our admission systems, the results of program enrollment requests, provides, you know, the course registrations provide the courses that they're in, and then ultimately things we haven't showed you yet is grading. They will get graded on those. This information for the academic record that you've seen today is primarily coming through functionality in EagleApps and the work of our data conversion team. And they're responsible for taking all the data from our current SIS system, mapping it into the new EA application structure, and verifying that it's coming in correctly. And then we turn it over to student services to do another verification. These various modules fit together kind of like building blocks for our new SIS system, with each one of them serving a very important part of the new SIS. And Dale, at that, I will turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Linda. Let me just pull my slides back up. Just give me a moment. As that loads up, I just want to say thank you to our presenters, Tom, Dan, and Linda. It's great again to have both the models, the functionality, and the demonstration by the users at Boston College being shared with us. You heard a couple other people who spoke during the event, and so that included Norm Wright, who also is shared between Boston College and Dexterra, and Jeff Merriman, the other co-founder of Dexterra and our Chief Technology Officer. As we finish up today, I want to make sure that any other questions are submitted through the Q&A or the chat. We always want to make sure we are interactive with this as best we're able in this new format. For those who've attended previously, we originally had planned a 1.5 or 2-day session in person at Boston College starting in April. We obviously converted to the virtual, and it's a great way to get information out, but we want to make sure we continue with a discussion. Again, submit any questions one last time, and before I wrap up officially and talk about our next events, maybe I can ask Mike, if Mike is still with us, to say a few words in closing, and then I'll wrap us up.
Okay, thank you, Dale. So I'd just like to reiterate the comments at the beginning about, I think you're hopefully getting a flavor as you see these various webinars, a really well thought through architecture and design for the system that enables very good flexibility in terms of functionality, in terms of data management and process, but also in terms of technology. And this is, we're proud of what we have, and we're proud of what this can become, but it's important that you recognize this wasn't just the product of Boston College or the product of Boston College and Dexterra. This emanates from original work of a group of approximately 20 schools in the United States and in Europe. And so we're pretty pleased with the capabilities and the potential of this system. This is not something that was crafted by Boston College for Boston College. This was something where we were part of a larger community, and we've kind of, brought this thing along according to the original vision, extended that vision, and now we're looking to, build a community that would enable this thing to take on a life of its own, be used at other institutions, and have a community that would care for it and extend its development. And that's really what we'd be looking forward to talk about next week in terms of how we might partner with schools to see how this could be implemented in one or more schools, and how a community could be developed to support this thing for the long run. I think this is it's a pretty unique approach to solving the problems related to student systems. This is the anti monolithic approach, right? This is not what you'd see from the big vendors. This allows you to interact with a variety of systems on premise, in the cloud, from a variety of vendors, and to do kind of a best of breed and curate that for the long term, as opposed to the approach that the big vendors have, where they try to be the big monolith, try to be the big umbrella overarching all data from all systems, controlling how you integrate things and controlling how you do your analytics. This flexibility, we think serves us well here and now. We've seen some of the benefits in real life, and we expect to see this continue to benefit us for the foreseeable future. And we appreciate your interest and hope you continue to be engaged.
Great, thank you, Mike. And again, thank you to our presenters. I know, I apologize, I cannot see the chat that has come in. There was a chat that was posted. So Jeff, if there was anything that we need to comment on, let me know. But as we wrap up our next, as Mike just gave an intro, next week on Thursday, we will talk about the EagleApps community that is growing and the implementation studies proposed and the opportunities to be involved in that. And as a baseline of understanding, when we talk about a community, there's some principles that we at Dexterra, and I think are shared with Boston College as a nonprofit consortium. We talk about if you're active in a community with us, that you engage, that you invest, you seek to improve whatever the project or product is, and you hope to share the results with the community. And so those are kind of our priorities as we think about an EagleApps community going forward. And we look forward to next week's session, same time on Thursday. And again, Jeff, just one last check. Was there anything that we needed to comment on in the chat?
No, there wasn't.
Okay, great. Thank you all for attending today. The recordings are available on the website. We hope to see you next week. You can always email us at eagleapps@dexterra.org with any additional questions or comments, but we'll see you next week.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Right.